Out of all the characters in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, Sir Duncan the Tall is one of my favorites.
Sir Duncan the Tall. 4 pages for Sir Duncan. He must have been quite a man.
So they say.
If you haven't read the novellas or heard the audiobooks, I recommend you do because I'm going to be talking about a lot of stuff that's in there. I won't go into all the background, but it's about the knight Sir Duncan the Tall and his travels and adventures with Egg, later on in life King Aegon V, or Daenerys' great-grandfather.
Aren't you supposed to be finishing The Winds of Winter this entire time?
They'll have to wait for the second half. First, I have to finish Winds of Winter.
Yep.
And then,
The second half of this?
well, maybe Dream of Spring, or maybe more Duncan Egg stories.
So one of the theories that most people know about and that has been confirmed by George is that Brienne is a descendant of Sir Duncan. Some fans speculated this when in the Brienne chapter of A Feast for Crows, she remembers a shield in her father's armory that sounds very similar to Dunk's, and remembering the coat of arms has her own shield repainted. This part of Dunk's life will be revealed in the 5th or possibly in the 6th novella, since the 5th, the village hero, is supposed to be set in the Riverlands, and Tarth is all the way in the Stormlands. So maybe I'm guessing that after the events of the 4th and 5th books, Dunk hears of a lord of Tarth who's in need of knights, and this lord would most likely be Brienne's great-grandfather. And perhaps just like in Brienne's case, her being the only remaining heir to her father, it's possible something similar happened during this time, with the lord of Tarth dying in battle, possibly alongside Dunk, and then in comforting his sister, now the only remaining heir of House Tarth, one thing led to another, resulting in Brianna's grandfather. Something that's interesting to me is that George confirmed this in 2016. A Feast for Crows came out in 2005, and the coat of arms Brienne remembers is from The Hedge Knight, the first Duncan Egg novella from 1998. So right there you know that George has had a deeper background story in mind for Dunk for a long time. The next theory that still hasn't been confirmed, but I think is most likely true, is that Hodor is also a descendant of Dunk. Not only for his height, but in the books Bran mentions that Old Nan is Hodor's grandmother's grandmother or something, and while in the cave of the Three-Eyed Crow he has a vision of a knight as tall as Hodor kissing a young woman in Winterfell. Most people suspect this is Sir Duncan and Old Nan, making Hodor probably a great-grandson of Dunk. And since the upcoming 4th novella is titled The She-Wolves of Winterfell, I'm sure that's where all these events will take place. My next theory is based on the fact that Egg, after becoming king, decides to, instead of having Brynden Rivers or Bloodraven executed for the murder of his half-nephew Aenys Blackfyre, he decides to make him join the Night's Watch and sends Dunk to escort him and Maester Aemon to the Wall, after Aemon refused the crown and passed it on to Egg. Also, there's a chance that in the events of the Mystery Knight, the character known as Sir Maynard Plumm is really Bloodraven disguising himself with magic, as even in the books Dunk thinks to himself how some claimed the King's Hand was a student of the dark arts who could change his face.
Plumm guided him across the yard. This close there was something queer about the cast of Sir Maynard's features. The longer Dunk looked, the less he seemed to see. "Who are you?" "A friend," said Maynard Plumm. "One who has been watching you."
Throughout the novellas, a recurring theme is of Targaryens having prophetic dreams, and with all the sorcery and magic attributed to Bloodraven, he must have had a dream about Dunk while on the road to the Wall. And Bloodraven already knowing Dunk, since he was most likely Maynard Plumm, it's possible that he might have given him insight into his dreams. Dunk has always felt guilty for the death of Prince Baelor during the tourney at Ashford Meadow, where instead of having his foot or hand chopped off, he called for a trial by combat, which then turned into a trial of 7. After that, he's always asking himself how could his foot be worth a prince's life. And while talking to Prince Maekar, Baelor's brother, also Egg's father, Dunk tells him this:
"Well, mightn't it be that some morrow will come when I'll have need of that foot? When the realm will need that foot, even more than a prince's life?" Maekar chewed on that a time. "It's not bloody likely."
So maybe he turns to Dunk and tells him someday the realm will need that foot, or something like that. Or at least he tells him that he has a part to play.
He's right. You need him. He has a part to play in the war to come.
Which brings me to my next point. Something that I haven't heard many people talk about is the fact that Dunk saved Rhaegar's mother. His actions during the tragedy at Summerhall saved Rhaella Targaryen, who gave birth to Rhaegar after being saved from the flames. And that is pretty big in my opinion. With all the Targaryens having prophetic dreams, Bloodraven must have seen something in Dunk, but his heroic actions in detail remain a mystery. It could be perhaps that in attempting to hatch the eggs with wildfire, it got out of control. Egg by this time became obsessed and consumed by a search for ancient lore about the dragon breeding of Valyria, and he supposedly commissioned journeys as far as Ashai just to find texts and ancient knowledge about how to hatch them. Some even claim King Aegon's intention was to use blood sacrifice to hatch them, just as Daenerys did years later. Although Egg in the book seems to be a good-hearted boy, he was just a boy. And keep in mind that kill the boy quote from Maester Aemon. In the show they didn't go into it, but in the book Maester Aemon is actually talking about Egg. So really this is the second Aegon that Maester Aemon tells this to.
Kill the boy, Jon Snow. Kill the boy. And let the man be born.
Egg was no longer a boy. Maybe after finding that information from Ashai, in his mind, he felt as though he had to do it. And that's when Dunk stepped in and stopped him, perhaps having to kill his own king, after seeing him go crazy with prophecy and lore, and just as Jaime sacrificed his honor and slayed his king to save the people of King's Landing, Dunk perhaps had to do just that, having not only to slay his king, but his lifelong friend to save all the people he could from the flames. There's also another theory that the Maesters and some houses of Westeros were the culprits of the tragedy, which makes sense since King Aegon did anger many lords and families by passing reforms and granting rights protecting the common people, and also by ultimately allowing his children to refuse their arranged marriages and letting them choose their own wives, making bitter enemies with many noble families. Or maybe them and the Maesters did play a part along with Aegon's desire to have dragons, which is something that he's thought about since he was a little boy.
Someday the dragons will return. My brother Daeron's dreamed of it, and King Aerys read it in a prophecy. Maybe it will be my egg that hatches. That would be splendid. Would it? Dunk had his doubts.
Egg had come to dream of dragons flying over Westeros, and convinced himself that if he only had dragons, he could have enough power to make the changes he wanted to make without the lords and houses getting in his way. Either way, what exactly happened in the tragedy at Summerhall will remain a mystery, until it's revealed in a future Duncan Egg story.
There have been references to the book. Something happened at Summerhall, something dark and traumatic. And what exactly happened? And the readers all want to know this. And I know what happened, but I don't want to tell the readers yet, because I want to reveal that in a later Duncan Egg story.
Next is the trial by combat with Lionel Baratheon. When Egg's son Prince Duncan broke his arranged marriage with the daughter of Lord Baratheon and married Jenny of Oldstones, this angered Lionel so much, he renounced his fealty to the crown, declared himself Storm King, and began a short but bloody rebellion that only ended with a one-on-one fight between him and Dunk.
A trial by combat, if I am correct, between Sir Duncan the Tall of the Kingsguard and Lord Lionel Baratheon. And this is the character in white, Sir Duncan, is the the character.
Is the Dunk of Duncan Egg,
Duncan
yes.
Egg.
But I haven't really told this story yet, so
it's kind of
you
a
know,
spoiler
we'll
there.
get to it eventually, in like the 7th or 8th Duncan Egg story.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But he's fighting Lionel Baratheon.
right,
All right. Is there anything more you want to tell us about that?
no.
Sir Lionel was known for being a great warrior. He was also known as the Laughing Storm. And also there's the fact that him and Dunk already knew each other after having fought in the same side in the Trial of Seven, which is probably why instead of the trial by combat ending in death, Sir Lionel decided to yield. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.